Garic Show, where free speech is not just encouraged, it's defended. Call Kristian at 504-556-9696.
Welcome back to the Kristian Garic Show. Runoff elections statewide, November 18th. Jason Smith's been on the program a few times. Washington Parish Sheriff candidate. Jason, how is the campaign? And good afternoon.
Hey, Kristian. Things are going well. All signs are positive. We're getting more and more support every day, and I'm just excited to see this thing through.
Jason, what are you hearing on the campaign trail in terms of post-primary commentary and support?
Well, it's really all been favorable, and I know probably every candidate would say that, but we have a lot of indications that things are moving in a positive direction for us. We were the number one vote getter in the primary election. There were 4 candidates running, and we got 42% of the vote. The incumbent only got about 34%, so we were 8 points better than him, which is important because you had 66% of people that voted for somebody different. And with the runoff, we've now got an opportunity to reach out to those voters who I wasn't their first choice, but that they still wanted change. And so I've just been having conversations with people. We've been overwhelmed with requests for T-shirts and hats and meetings, and if anything, the pace has picked up since the primary election. And in some ways, I kind of thought it might slow down a little bit because with only 2 candidates, people maybe have kind of made up their mind. But if anything, the pace has picked up, which is encouraging for us, certainly.
Clearly, they're not very happy with the incumbent, Randy Seal. What are they not happy with?
Well, I think most people are just frustrated with the conditions within Washington Parish. There are over 3,000 counties in the United States, and Washington Parish ranks number 14 in the entire country for opioid overdoses per capita. Now, if you think about that, that should shock people. We're not only just the highest in the state, we're 14th in the entire country for the opioid overdoses per capita. And then you match that up with property crimes are rising, car thefts, child abuse, all these indications that crime is getting out of control and the quality of life is going down, and yet our current sheriff is continuing to say he's doing a great job and things are fine. Well, people can look around for themselves and clearly see that things are not fine, and that doing more of what we already know does not work. It's not a solution. So they're not happy with the way things are going, and they're not willing to say we're going to sacrifice the future of our kids for another 4 years of somebody who just wants to continue to hold on to the same job.
Jason, I'm going to ask a question you're probably going to scoff at, but were you surprised that you got 42% of the vote?
No. In some ways, I was, the honest answer is in some ways I was disappointed because I really thought there was an opportunity to wrap this up in the first round. One of my assumptions going into this race was that people are tired of being told that things are fine and leave it up to the experts. And, I've been in politics, and so I know what's best for everybody when people can clearly see that things aren't working. And so I had an assumption that people were ready for something different. I was a little disappointed that we didn't wrap it up for the first round, but I think, if I'm truly honest, if you had told me back in January before we announced that in October we would be the number one vote getter by 8 points against a 3-term incumbent and 2 other candidates, I would have taken that, all day long. So I recognize that we weren't able to clean it up in the first round, but we were certainly in a much better position than I thought we could have been. I know that sounds like a long answer to a short question, but and this may sound like a politician's answer, but yes and no. I was surprised and not surprised at the same time.
Has the sheriff sent any more attacks your way since the primary? I know he spent pretty heavy dollars trying to link you to George Soros, of all people.
Yeah, I think that was a desperate move. I think, and listen, I don't have any inside knowledge of what goes on in other people's minds, and certainly not inside their camps when they're running a political campaign. But I think he got some advice that, based off of they knew that they were behind. I think they knew that they weren't resonating with people. and they decided to go negative as a way to couch me as some outsider who's somehow a puppet of these leftists all across the country that aren't having success in California, New York somehow, and want to plant a flag in Washington Parish, and they're going to use me as the point man for this. I think people saw it for what it was, and I think that's why we haven't seen any negative attacks since the primary election, because people can just see how clearly verifiably false it all was.
So, Jason, should you win re-election, what is your vision for Washington Parish Sheriff Department?
You mean, should I win the election, or are you talking 4 years from now? I like the way you're thinking.
No.
I just want to make sure I answer the question correctly.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, if you win, what's your vision for, what do you want to make of Washington Parish Sheriff's Office? What do you want to get done?
Well, listen, I know you and I share a connection to the Marine Corps, but really my vision is to make the patrol of Washington Parish, of the Sheriff's Office, the focus of effort. In the Marine Corps, we say every Marine is a rifleman, and we're out there to support the infantrymen. I don't care what your MOS is. If you're not an 0311, you're in support. And that's really my vision for the Sheriff's Office. I don't care what our job is. If we're not that patrol deputy on the road, then we are in support of that patrol deputy on the road. We're going to make the patrol the focus of effort across the parish, because that's what the taxpayers want. I hear it from people constantly that they want to see a bigger presence in the sheriff's office out where they live. We've got to get people out of the office. We got to get people out about interacting with the community so that they get to build relationships and they get to provide the public safety that what the public is expecting.
Jason, do you think your background as a retired Marine officer helped you in particular when it comes to leadership? I mean, a lot of folks that haven't served, they really like to get behind military service members when it comes to stuff like this.
Yeah, and this is going to sound, I don't mean this to sound boastful, but all military, I mean, I've joked before, I was never a member of the military, I was a member of the Marine Corps. And so as a result of my Marine Corps experience, that put me in different jobs in different ways and working in different environments. So it's not a function of just my Marine Corps experience or my military experience. It's the specific jobs that I had, the types of units that I was in charge of, the types of environments that I operated in, the types of people that I had to interact with, both within the organization and outside the organization. I think that's what's prepared me to add value to the sheriff's office.
Your time in the Marines, you led. At what level did you lead?
Well, I commanded from platoon all the way up to battalion.
Okay, and you commanded in combat as well, right?
That's right. I was a company commander twice, both for the initial invasion of Iraq and then for the first battle of Fallujah in 2004.
Jason Smith, Washington Parish Sheriff candidate here on the Kristian Garic Show. Jason, my favorite quote about the Marine Corps, by the way, is from Ronald Reagan, and I might get it wrong here, but I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. Some people have to wonder if they have an impact on the world. The Marines don't have that problem. That was one of my favorite quotes about the Marine Corps in general.
Yeah, that's a good one, and that's really that's the mentality that we're going to try to instill in the deputies in the sheriff's offices. Like, we have the ability to impact our world here on a local level, and there's no bigger impact than you can have than on the daily lives of people that you live next to, that you interact with on a regular basis. So I'm not interested in the world as much as I am in Washington Parish at this point.
Are you going to have some uniformity? I know Marines are, from having served, we're big on uniformity and everybody kind of looking the same. No individuals, so to speak, especially in patrol.
Yeah, I think that has a dramatic effect on the psyche of people. I know some people will say, well, it's not important to do their job, and they're right in some respects, but it's not about the deputy's ability to do the job as much as it is the perception that we give the people that we're interacting with. We are emotional creatures, human beings, and people will respond based off of how you present yourself. And it's very important that we as an organization, as a sheriff's office, present ourselves as a professional, uniform, responsible organization. So, I mean, there's a reason why if guys are trying to impress a girl, they dress a certain way. It's just the way that we're wired, and we're definitely going to embrace that at the sheriff's office.
Jason, just look, I know that this might sound silly, but from having, when you serve, you could tell a squared away Marine by the way, he was dressed out in his uniform, and you probably weren't going to say much to him. Just like a police officer gets out, our sheriff's deputy gets out on a call, and he in his uniform looks all wrinkled and everything else. That doesn't exactly instill trust from the public either.
No, it definitely doesn't, and especially when, I've said that the biggest problem in the parish is the security situation in Bogalusa, and we're really trying to affect the decision-making of these 15 to 20-year-old, 25 maybe, year-old men that are causing most of the violence. And if you know anything about 15 to 25-year-old men, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to size you up. And I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the way that it is. They're going to size you up and judge you based on how you present yourself. And if they think that you're a threat to them, they're going to proceed a certain way. If they don't have any respect for you because of how you present yourself, they're also going to make certain decisions and proceed a certain way. So we've just got to impress on the deputies that how you present yourself makes your job either easier or makes it more difficult. And I'm going to put them in a position where it's going to make their job easier from the outset.
Jason Smith, Washington Parish Sheriff candidate. Sit tight. I got a few more for you. I also want to talk about the Marine Corps birthday coming up and Veterans Day as well. So sit tight, all right? Back here on the Kristian Garic Show, watching John Kirby right now, who's like a master class in lying. He's saying it may take several pauses in Gaza to get out the hostages. And he's now deciding to determine that ceasefire is different from a pause. I'd love to be hearing this. Anyway, welcome back to the show. Jason Smith, Washington Parish Sheriff candidate. Jason, you spent some time, obviously, we documented it in the Marine Corps. What would a pause in Gaza do for Hamas?
Well, it probably would do a lot of the same thing that a pause in Fallujah helped do to the insurgents that were there. Allows them to regroup, allows them to organize, allows them to rest and refit, and come up with other plans.
Yeah, not a good strategy at all. Anyway, Jason, the Marine Corps birthday is coming up on Friday, 1775, November 10th, 1775. I actually shipped to boot camp on November 10th of 1997, not by design, but just want to give you an opportunity to wish the Marine Corps a happy birthday, but also reflect on your time as a Marine.
Yeah, well, the Marine Corps birthday is a big deal. I've got lots of friends that are celebrating in their own ways. We always do the cake and present a piece of cake to the oldest Marine present, the youngest Marine present. And I don't know if it was just a happy accident of nature that we celebrated at Veterans Day, but in my last 3 years in the Marine Corps, I was an exchange officer with the Royal Marines, and of course, World War I had a huge impact on Europe for a lot of different ways, and they view World War I almost in a lot of the same ways that we view World War II here in this country. And they celebrate Remembrance Day the same time that we celebrate Veterans Day, and the red poppy is their flower of commemoration. And so I kind of adopted that. It came from the American Legion, strangely enough. There was a Canadian soldier that had written a poem in Flanders Field where he talks about where the red poppies blow between the crosses row on row. And it was a good way for the American Legion in the 20s to commemorate veterans and their service. We didn't have a Memorial Day, an official Memorial Day then. Anyway, the British kind of adopted that flower, and that it's huge. If you look at anything that's going on in the UK during this week, you'll see red poppies all over the place because it signifies each of those poppies commemorates somebody that was willing to serve. Here in this country, we talk a lot about thank you for your service to veterans. And something about that kind of rubs me the wrong way because nobody gets to decide what type of service they provide. In other words, you don't get to decide whether or not you go to war. You don't get to decide whether or not you deploy. You don't get to decide whether you go overseas or whether you go stateside. You don't get to decide what MOS you have or what your job's going to be. The only thing you get to decide is whether or not you serve. You, Kristian Garic, you get to decide, I'm going to boot camp, and then it's up to the Marine Corps to decide, hey, you're going to leave on the Marine Corps' birthday. And so I think we should start to say, thank you for serving, because we need people in this country, we need people in this world that are willing to put their personal motives aside and say, I'm willing to serve, regardless of what the circumstances might be. I know that I don't have a lot of choice in what happens, but I'm willing to do it anyway. So if you see a veteran, if you get a chance to shake a veteran's hand here between now and Saturday in commemoration of Veterans Day, we should thank them for serving, not necessarily for their service.
Well put, Jason. I'm curious. You went through OCS. I went through boot camp and enlisted compared to a commissioned officer. I know when I got to Parris Island, there were some fleeting moments of, second guessing myself. Was that the case for you even at OCS?
Listen, I could talk to you about this part all day, but I was woefully unprepared to show up at Quantico. My officers have recruiters as well, and my recruiter actually got out of the Marine Corps while I was applying, and so I didn't have anything. You show up to OCS with all kinds of stuff. It's a little bit different than boot camp. You're allowed to bring a certain amount of gear, and they give you a gear list to show up with, because you have prior enlisted Marines that go to officer candidate school to become officers. But I showed up with a shaving kit, and that was it, and the clothes on my back. And I just knew, you show up, and guys are showing up with 2 and 3 sea bags worth of stuff. And I just thought to myself, I have made a colossal mistake. And here, 22 and a half years later, then you end up retiring from the Marine Corps, and it was the best decision I ever made. So sometimes it's good not to get exactly what you think you're supposed to get.
Yeah, I agree. Friday on the Marine Corps birthday, I'm going to play for my audience, some just sounds of boot camp, what it sounds like when you first get there, halfway through, the crucible, the graduation, just so people can get a feel of what in particular, the first 24 to 48 hours in Parris Island is just complete and sheer chaos. But there's a clip that I'm going to play that where the recruits get there and they get to make their one and only phone call home to alert their family that they have arrived safely at Parris Island. And there's no conversation. It's just a script, and they have to hang up the phone. All the while, the drill instructors are in the background, and they know moms and dads are listening to this and freaking out, I'm sure. So that puts them on a bigger stage, so they want to act a fool even more, in a good way. When I say fool, I got tremendous love for drill instructors. But, I can't imagine a parent being on the other end of that. My father was in the Army officer, so when I called him, he was like, great, bye. Other parents, I'm sure freaked out. As a recruiter, I'm sure you heard quite a bit about that.
Yeah, I was in charge of the recruiting station in New Jersey, so we were responsible for all of New Jersey. I was there from the late 2000s, and every so often you'd have a distraught mother that would call and want to talk to the command officer because she was upset that she got a call in the middle of the night from her stressed out son. And the drill instructors definitely play it up like you described, because they want the stress of the parents to kind of filter into the stress of the recruit as he's at boot camp. It's all part of the process, and of course they build them back up. But you're right; those first 48 hours are definitely designed to instill a little bit of trepidation in the recruits as they show up there.
And you know what, Jason? And we got about a minute left, but I'd do it all over again today if I could. I would do it all over again. I really would. I don't know if you feel that way, but I would do it.
It would require more than a few waivers for you at this point, I think.
Oh, I know. I'd have to drop quite a bit of weight too. So, but anyway, Jason, look, how can folks get involved in your campaign and your runoff election?
Well, the easiest way is to find us on Facebook or online. Our website is sheriffjasonsmith.com. We're pretty easy to find. We've got stuff put on YouTube, and we've got our Facebook page up at Jason Smith for Sheriff. Reach out to us, and we're easy to get to know, and I think you'll like what you find.
Jason Smith, Washington Parish Sheriff candidate. Good luck to you, and Semper Fi.
Thanks so much. Semper Fi, and happy birthday.
Same to you. Happy birthday, Marine. All right, 1 hour down, one more to go. Up next, our weekly visit.